The Short Game is listener-supported on Patreon. If you'd like to support the show and join us on our Discord, head to theshortgame.net or patreon.com/theshortgame.
Welcome back to The Short Game, the show about short video games, games that respect your time. I'm Raygan Kelly, and I think I remember how to do this show.
I know, you're back.
Welcome back, Raygan. Yeah, it's been a little while. Listeners, thank you for bearing with us while things have been a little weird, and thank you to my co-hosts, especially Nate and Laura, who's not here for this episode, sorry Laura, for taking things on while I have been dealing with hurricane-induced, very lengthy power outages, and then a work trip that came right after that, which kept me away from the show. So, things have been a little weird, but I'm excited to get back into it with the weirdest goddamn game we've played in a while. Oh, sorry. Who else is on the show with me?
It's been so long you forgot how to do the intro.
I did. And I'm Shane Kelly.
And I'm Nate Heininger. And Raygan, you come back from your little hiatus and you say, you guys, I have found the single greatest game I've ever played. You have to play. Have to play Clickolding. My life has changed and
transcended.
Yeah, so thanks for this.
Raygan, do you want to tell us something about yourself by choosing this game? Is this another Freedom Planet?
Raygan has a necklace on that has 4 clickers
click the tally
attached
counter.
to it.
Click it.
Yeah. This game was, I have to say it, this game is awful.
What? Come on, I thought this was neat.
This is the worst thing you've ever made me play.
I liked it, Raygan, but it is dumb as hell, but I think that's part of the point.
Okay. So this week we are talking about Clickolding.
Clickolding.
A basically $3 half-hour, I would say joke game, although it has a little more going for it than just a one-note joke, in my opinion. Yeah. From Strange Scaffold and their lead designer Xavier Nelson, who we've recently talked about his incredible game El Paso Elsewhere. So same developer, same team. So I think RJ Lake did the audio on this as well. I don't know exactly what the overlap is between those two projects, but same designer and same studio. This is a weird one.
Uh-huh.
Can anyone other than me please explain the nature of Clickolding?
Oh, I'd be happy to. So this is, in this so-called game, you are in a hotel room, sitting on a bed and holding in your left hand a tally counter, and across from you so I think the important thing to know here, I think it's important to define the term cuck chair. He's sitting in the cuck chair. For listeners who might not be aware, the term cuckolding is an extremely old term in English, which means for someone to sleep with your wife. In fact, fans of Shakespeare will know that to tug someone's beard is to call them a cuckold in Shakespearean text. Well, this is no Shakespeare, by the way. So a cuck chair, to further define it, is the chair that they put into a hotel room that faces the bed directly. The idea being that this is the chair that you would sit in while someone engages in some sort of activity with your spouse on the bed. So I think
It just occurred to me.
game.
Is the Clickold guy married to the tally counter?
No, he mentioned. Well, I don't want to.
No.
I don't want to do. We haven't established a firm spoiler policy
Maybe,
for
I
this
guess.
game.
Well, he's sure. I think that we can't. I think spoiling this game. I think this game is pre-spoiled. I think the game is like a gallon of milk that you bring home from the store and you open it and it smells bad immediately.
Man, Shane really hated this thing.
I'm very glad you like Raygan said, will someone explain it? And I was kind of like I was gonna start talking, and I'm really glad that you jumped in before me because I don't think I would have centered the conversation.
I'm sorry I
around
jumped. I'm glad
the
I
cuck
jumped
chair.
in so that you guys know that the cuck chair. So sitting in the cuck chair is a bizarre figure wearing kind of a jacket, boots, a disgustingly stained shirt, and a mask that looks kind of like a cross between Squidward and an Easter Island head. And he wants you to click the tally counter. So this part
Boy,
was
does he.
a little disturbing for me. He sure does. I'm going to digress for a moment because I feel like I have to get some mental space from this game for a moment. Do either of you guys own a tally counter?
Yes.
No, but now I wish I
do.
did.
They're great. I love it. Yeah.
This game made you want to own it. This game has made. I had been shopping for. I had thought about buying one because I thought, hey, that kind of seems like it would be satisfying. Like I have a lot of little things on my desk that are basically desk toys, like timers and things like that are good for my ADHD. And I thought to myself, hey, a tally counter would kind of fit right in there. In fact, there's like. Of course there's a Kickstarter for like an insanely overproduced, super expensive tally counter. I mean, and I thought to myself, looking at that on the screen, gosh, that seems like it'd be really satisfying to click. Well, I think after this game, I may never, I might never touch a tally counter again. I might never count again. So in the cuck chair, the bizarre Squidward-like creature is. He asks you, well, I'm just going to summarize at this point. He wants you to click the tally counter. He has money for you.
$14,000.
Yes, $14,000, which he says is what you need for some sort of operation, which is great. Now there's coercion involved. And he... He just wants you to click the tally counter in various different positions, with the windows open, with the windows closed.
He really wants the mood and the temp in the room, and everything needs to be exactly right.
Right. This game is driven really by the unhinged monologue that it kind of carries through the entire thing. Does anybody want to talk about the monologue, the
So I think
character of the bizarre click man?
there's a number of things.
The Clickold.
There's a number of things going on here. So first of all, as you said, he wants you to click it. It's very specific though. He wants you to click it 10,000 times, and that is, as a player, you basically control like three things. Every time you click your mouse or your keyboard or whatever, it clicks it once. That makes sense. You can also hold the button down and it clicks it at like a very steady pace. And I didn't realize until about halfway through that you can also like really tap and really, really like, for what I started doing is drumming on my space bar and being able to hit like a really rapid pace. Side note, I've had a mechanical keyboard for a while, but I almost never have any reason to use it. And it was really great. This was very satisfying. It might be why I ultimately liked this game, was that I just got to click my mechanical keyboard spacebar like 10,000 times. But anyway.
Another side note while we're doing side notes. Are you guys familiar with Takahashi Meijin?
No.
I thought about him a
course,
lot
yes.
as I was clicking
Takahashi
the tally
Meijin.
counter. Takahashi Meijin is a
Who's that?
well, he's an employee of I think Hudson Soft in Japan, but he's famous for in the 80s. He was on a lot of TV shows about video games in Japan, and he became widely famous for being able to press the button on a Famicom controller 16 times per second, which was very, very, very fast at the time. And that made a lot of difference in games like, shooters and things like that. And he was just this guy who like worked for Hudson, but he became such a figure because of this ability to hit buttons very quickly that they made a cartoon about him. The Adventure Island games, the ones where you're like a little dude on a skateboard who throws little hammers. That guy is Takahashi Meijin. Nice. So they made a whole series of video games about him. Just became incredibly famous for being able to hit buttons quickly. And I just thought a whole lot about Takahashi Meijin and how much money he could have made.
Yeah, he would have been exactly. Although I think this guy, the person in the cuck chair, I don't think he would have wanted that.
It's not about speed to him.
Yeah, it's not about speed. So although sometimes it's about speed. But anyway, so your main gameplay is clicking this button over and over and over while our friend in the chair either monologues at you or gives you minor directions. So and that's the other sort of gameplay that you have in this game. You're in a very small hotel room and you can walk in basically like a grid, and the total grid is maybe like 9 places that you can stand. It's like in front of the TV, in front of the window, in the hallway, in the bathroom, in front of the trash can. Like there's only a few spots, but throughout the game he'll be like, don't look at me, turn around, walk into the hallway. Okay, now click. Turn on the TV, and you walk over and you click and turn on the TV. And it's like, okay, now click. All right, now click faster. Now click slower. Lots of mostly click based.
No, this is all wrong.
Yeah, mostly click based.
Do it again. Do it over there.
Don't look at me. Okay, now look at me. Get real close to me. Really fun and cool video game shit that we love in video games. And other than that, you can interact with a couple objects. Mostly, again, it's only what he tells you to do. And that's the whole game. This person telling you what to do while you click the little button. And there is a broader sort of tone that the monologue is either him telling you what to do, or I don't know, sort of like lamenting his life and his dreams and everything having like collapsed and being in this room.
There's a lot of justification in there.
Yeah.
I feel like despite the mask, he feels like he can reveal himself to you somewhat as the weird freak that he is. He is clear that he is not open about his love of the tally counter to anyone else in his life. It's also stated that he can no longer click the tally counter. I'm not sure why.
Not the way he wants to.
Not the way he wants to. He has a diagnosis.
Not the way he wants to. But he did say that your hands looked like his, and that's why he wanted you to do this. And that so you're kind of his stand-in,
and you click it real good.
Yeah, well, I mean, you had to check that. He also brought with him a gun.
Yep, that came out.
That's real cool. We love
there was
that.
Around 5,000 clicks in, he has shown you the money, and then he has kind of put the money away, and then at a certain point he pulls a gun out, and that certainly was very attention getting.
Yeah. It
was.
I think you should. It should be
I think
noted
the
too.
one last thing I want to say about the guy's monologue is that he has a certain mystical quality to like this whole elaborate ordeal he's set up for you. He talks about having had a dream, and it's like the mask he made, the weird, hideous,
Stupid
Squidward that you
mask,
described it as, Shane.
Yeah.
Just like, it's something that came to him in a dream, and this whole scenario that he's having played out, he's having you play out, is because he's trying to reenact something from his dream that he woke from with purpose. It's disturbing. It's like a little bit like, who is this insane person that I'm locked in a hotel room with? But there is something kind of sympathetic about him, I thought. Like,
I disagree.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with you, Raygan. I mean, we're not here to kink shame anyone. If your thing is, having someone is clicking a little clicker, and you can't do it anymore, and your wife doesn't get it, and you have to resort to spending $14,000 for some person to come in with a hotel room and click a little thing for you.
Yeah.
Some
people are into that. Some people are into finding the weirdest trash on the internet and making their brother play it and then talk about it on a podcast.
I think another note on this guy.
I'm in the pod chair.
We haven't mentioned yet. So
I have to say one thing. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry, Nate. I played this at night, and my situation with my house is under heavy construction because of a remodel. I've moved everything into my bedroom. My office is in my bedroom. And I had to play this for the podcast late at night. So I was playing it with headphones on, thinking that would be okay. My wife was asleep in the same room with me with her sleep mask on. This is usually fine. She hears nothing from the video games. I got big can headphones. But this one, she was hearing this. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I should say there was a point, probably because of the noise.
Here you go.
I did get shushed.
There you go.
Thank you. Yeah, make some clicks.
Now that's a mechanical keyboard click, right?
At about 5,000 clicks, I took my wallet out of my pocket and I just laid it on the space bar, and that got me the entire rest of the way through the game.
Yeah, you can just hold it down. It just clicks a lot slower. And there are periods in this game where it's like clearly triggered by the dialogue and whatnot is clearly triggered by like landmarks once you hit a certain amount of clicks. So there are periods where you're like, I don't know, where I had to click like 1,000 times before I got to the next line of dialogue. I'm just sitting there like staring at this guy clicking, like, come on, say something. But what I was trying to say earlier, I think it's important for the tone and for the overall vibe of this game is that if you're not playing it, is that all this monologue is text on the screen and also a very bizarre sound. Like I've seen people make some comparisons to Inscription, which it's a very loose comparison, but there is that sort of like he talks in a like digital, crunchy, broken sort of thing. So it always matches what the guy's saying, but it's illegible. It's just like, that sort of noise. And it just adds like an extra strangeness to the whole thing.
I played this game with very little context. I knew it was from Strange Scaffold. I'd seen the trailer, and that's pretty much it. And that's if you've seen the trailer, honestly, you've got a pretty good idea of what this is all about because the game takes place in a single room. There are surprises, but it's not like the game is what it says on the tin, and it's a $3 game. It'll take you 30-40 minutes. But after that, I read the article or oral history of this game that is up at Wired, and I'll have that linked in the show notes. And I don't know if I recommend reading this before or after playing the game. I think either is fine, but it gives a little bit of background on why they made this and how. And I think you could kind of get the vibe that like this is a game that grew out of a weird joke a bunch of developers were making to each other. But it's a great read. It's very funny. The long and short of it is that at some point in the evening of GDC in 2024, Oliver Nelson Jr., the studio head at Strange Scaffold, a bunch of people from Aggro Crab, and from some people from Inner Sloth, the people who make Among Us, were all hanging out in a lobby, and one of them had bought a tally counter at a store, and they were all sort of passing it around, clicking it, and talking about, wow, this thing is satisfying, feel this. And then, of course, as they're clicking it and making each other click it, they hit upon this idea of, no, I don't want to click it. Oh, you click it for me.
Yeah.
And the idea of clickolding like burst into being. And over the course of the evening, this evolved into the complete concept for the game. And in fact, Inner Sloth has a program where they fund, because they've made bukus of money on Among Us. They have a program called Outer Sloth where they fund indie games, and it seems like more or less Oliver Nelson Jr. bullied them into funding this game, and I'm glad he did, because this is such a strange.
Yeah, I read.
I hope they didn't fund him.
I can't recommend reading this highly enough. It's great.
I didn't. So I did the same thing as you, Raygan. I actually didn't even watch the trailer. I just turned on the game and played. So I went in completely blind to this, which is my preferred way to go into the games we cover. And it was an incredibly bizarre experience. And I read the article afterwards, and I was kind of glad that I had that order, mostly because the game, everything about the game, everything about the character is very serious in the game. Like there's no jokes or anything like that, but the whole thing is absurd and kind of hilarious, right? And so to find out after the fact that it was basically a bit, like the whole thing is a bit that he then tried to convert into like a serious game, still was pretty satisfying and made me kind of enjoy the whole thing a little bit more. Like, it's like what happens when a brilliant game designer has a really good joke with their friends? Well, a couple months later, we get a $3, 30-minute game that is this. Like, I like that we live in that world.
I think the incredible thing about Oliver Nelson Jr. is that like he seems to constantly have like 10 projects going at once, and he can take these things and turn them into games very, very quickly. And I'm sure, obviously everything is from a team and whatnot, but this guy has a consistent pattern of just like coming out with things and shipping it, like he consistently ships games and does it so often, and he's not afraid of just throwing up a weird little $3 thing with a threatening sex pest click command in it. Like he's not afraid of doing that. I think it's great. Yeah. I also just remembered the one other thing that I absolutely have to talk about that we haven't mentioned yet, which is the logo.
Like how it looks like cuckolding, but it spells clickolding.
Yes, exactly. Because the L and the
Can I be honest with you though, Raygan?
Yes.
I didn't put it together until the article. Until Molly, I was telling Molly about the game, and she was like, "Oh, like cuckolding," and I'm like, "Oh my god, I'm an idiot." I was glad that she had said it on the before, because I would have been flabbergasted live on the show, and instead I'm telling you about how stupid I am. But it definitely made it more confusing. Like I put it all together, but some reason the cuckolding thing I didn't think about. I guess unlike Shane, I'm not as familiar with all the language and all the concepts around it. So.
They were talking about how the logo was also one of the very first things they came up with, and as they were talking about this, somebody got out a notebook and like wrote it. Yeah. And Oliver Nelson described it as like when James Cameron pitched Aliens. I don't know if you guys remember that story, but like the story is that James Cameron pitched the movie Aliens to the studios by walking in silently, going up to a blackboard and writing "Alien" in big letters, and then looking at the studio heads. and then turning around and writing S on the end and turning around at the studio heads and then looking back and drawing a couple vertical lines through that S.
Yeah. Wow. What a genius.
Genius. And, just drawing click holding with the L and I very close together in block letters. There it is, baby.
It's basically the same thing.
It's a good bit.
It's a good bit. And that's how I feel about this game.
Now, listener, that we have spoiled the joke for you, is it still worth $3 to try?
I think it's a
30
joke
minutes
worth
of your
$3.
time.
I think
it's a joke worth $3.
I think it's worth it.
For sure.
We're not talking.
And we haven't spoiled the ending for you, which, listener, it was a pretty good ending and had a bit of a surprise.
Yeah, and there's a post credits thing too that leans into the surreal, dreamy thing, which does.
We're done. This is a 30-minute game. We're not talking about it.
We've spent 25 minutes talking about it.
We have another short game classic.
Raygan, is this your game of the year?
So far, absolutely. You can find this on Steam, where it costs less than $3, and I would recommend checking it out. And everything else by Strange Scaffold.
This guy might be my dirtbag of the year, though.
Oh, shit.
Oh, my God. Shit.
Yeah, I think he's front runner.
Oh, no.
Front runner by a mile now.
Front runner.
There's not even.
God, you're right.
There's no one even in close right now to dirtbag of the year.
No, I don't know how anyone could be
almost every character from Velvedique would also be pretty good for dirtbag of the year. But this guy, I think, is pretty far up the line.
Awesome. Well, we've spent half an hour talking about a half an hour game, so it's time for us to shift gears a little bit. It's been a little while since we've had one of these. Let's talk about what's making us happy this week. Shane, what's making you happy this week?
I feel like I just did that new sequel to that town building game, Outlanders. That was my last making me happy.
Yep.
That's actually still making me very, very happy. But what I'll say is there's been another huge update to No Man's Sky.
Wow.
And a lot of these end up really pulling me back into that game. It's a real, we've talked many times about the idea of like kind of a cozy chill out game, and No Man's Sky is a great one and remains a game I love to come back to, especially when they've made just huge quality of life and graphics improvements, and you can just sort of see these crazy worlds looking better than they ever have. This update is called the Worlds Update Part 1. So we're going on, I don't know how many years of updates from this game, where they continue to add new systems, improve existing ones, rework them. In No Man's Sky Worlds, the biggest thing that I noticed is they have just made every single planet look much better. First off, they redid how water works in the game. They added volumetric clouds. They changed the look of the skies in the game just completely. And it really visually makes the game just... It's always been a beautiful game, but it's a much more beautiful game. It kind of reworks their whole world generation setup, really. So it's a great time to go back and check it out. What I hadn't done is I hadn't been on for like the last few updates. So getting back into that, I don't know what updates did all of these things, but there are several things that I have noticed changed. One, they have significantly reworked how the space stations look and work. The space stations were one of the most important systems in the game. That's kind of a trade hub and a teleport hub and all sorts of things. And they started off very plain Jane, as everything in that game did, but eventually became big, thriving spots with lots of weird-looking alien NPCs. And they're definitely still a great place to see the weird alien NPCs. but they've redesigned the whole layout of the space stations. They've put so much to do in there in terms of just from like quest hubs, and it's all very thoughtfully laid out now, so it looks cool, but also has like a really useful, nice setup for how you find your way around. Better signage is actually important to stuff like this.
Signage
they
is always
look
nice.
cooler from the outside. One thing I did always like about No Man's Sky's space stations was I grew up playing a lot of Elite clones, right? And Elite was this sort of original wireframe space trader sim game, and there's still an Elite out there, but it goes way back. The space stations were always a dodecahedron, like a 20 sided triangular ball, and I always liked that the No Man's Sky space stations pretty much all looked just like the one going back to that game I played as a kid. But now there are a lot of weird looking designs for them, and they're very cool in there. That's about all I really noticed as being different, except for the fact that there's a bunch of more variety to the creatures. Once you've seen a million randomly generated like Monster Mash creatures, you kind of seen them all. But this time they've added a lot of new structures and body plans to these things and little parts. So I'm still kind of diving back into it, messing around. Always enjoy my time with that game. Probably putting it down for another few months. We'll see. I play it for about 1 or 2 nights, and then I'll disappear from the game for a while.
Yeah, I need to check it back out.
Yeah, making me happy this week. Yeah. It's a good time to check it out, and I think it's coming up on probably when they stop doing these many, many years of free updates, because their next game is approaching soon.
I was surprised to
they've
hear
been working on Light No Fire for a long time.
Surprised to hear that they were still making a new game or more for it. I think I played Raygan. I don't know if you ever even dipped your toes in that. I know, Shane, you and I played together for a little while, and I always really enjoyed the game, but I just have not gone back to it in years. So maybe it's something I can check out again soon.
Yeah, I've only ever really experienced it over Shane's shoulder, but I'm happy for the people that it is making happy. And I am kind of interested in Light No Fire. I think maybe I'll check that out when it comes.
Well, I'll go next. We can stick with space-themed stuff. So I have I've chronicled on the show for a long time, though there's been a little bit of a gap. But about 7 years ago, I decided to undertake the effort of watching every single Star Trek there is. I had never seen any Star Trek, but I always knew I'd love it. And I thought, because I'm a crazy person, I decided, well, if I'm going to watch Star Trek, I should watch it all. And so I started from the original series, and I've been working my way chronologically through Star Trek. And I did that pretty much nonstop all the way up until I started the 2018 Star Trek Discovery. And I watched the first 3 episodes, really didn't like it, turned it off, and I didn't watch Star Trek for like 2 years. I'd watched Star Trek nonstop for about 5 years straight. Literally something like 550 episodes of Star Trek I had watched, and Discovery turned me off. And also life gets busy and whatnot. But anyway, I stopped watching it. A few months ago, I've been flying a lot more in the last year, and I was on a flight, and it was a particularly long flight, and I started getting like crazy antsy, so I started just tapping through the little on-flight entertainment, and so they had the first 3 episodes of Star Trek Discovery as an option to watch on the flight. So I thought, all right, I'll give it another shot, and I watched those 3, and I still didn't really like it, but it's Star Trek, and I've grown so fond of the series that even like bad Star Trek, I kind of just still love. And so now I'm near the end of the 2nd season of Star Trek Discovery, and I'm sorry to say what's making me happy is it has become a bit of like a hate watch sort of thing for me, which I don't normally engage in, but because it's also part of my larger quest of watching all Star Trek. Like, it's still Star Trek. There are things that I like about it, and there's some stuff that they do that is compelling, and they do some fun Star Trek elements. You know, they did a really fun, because it's Captain Pike is now in it. They did a really fun like crossover from the very first episode of Star Trek, the pilot, The Cage, and an episode of Discovery, because it's some of the same characters, and like the way they melded the original series footage with this as like a teaser opener was really cool. And they do these little things that make me like it. But for the most part, the show is so overwritten, so melodramatic, and so just like stupid that I laugh more while I'm watching it. It's like peak lens flare, production style. Like the camera's constantly zooming around the room, and like they try to do these really long cuts, and it's all I think pretty bad. But it's still Star Trek. I have such a place in my heart for it at this point that I'm watching it and I'm making my way through it. So I don't know if someone else has watched this show and can maybe help reframe it for me into why it's good. I'd love to hear it, but for the most part, I find myself laughing at how stupid it is, and I guess that's okay too. I'm still having a good time.
Well, yikes! Yeah, I was never tempted to check out that one. I've thought many times over the years about going back and rewatching some of the, like, especially Deep Space Nine. I really want to like take the time with that one, because I think I've seen a whole lot of other Star Treks, and I think I've seen very little of Deep Space Nine. But yeah, I don't know about Discovery.
Star Trek has basically gotten worse every single show. You know, like the original series is its own thing. I love it. It's its own thing though. And then Next Generation is most people's favorite. If that's not your favorite, then Deep Space Nine is your favorite, and you can, like, there's valuable arguments.
And then it's all
and then after that is Voyager, which I really enjoyed, but it is not as good. And then Enterprise, which is almost also really bad, but there's some things that are redeeming about it. And then Discovery, which has just been even worse. I've heard Picard is horrible, so my next one up is bad too. But I've heard Strange New World, the one running right now, is very good, so I'm hopeful. And also Star Trek Lower Decks, which I've talked about on this show, the cartoon, the animated show with like Jack Quaid and Tawny Newsome and them. It's incredible. I love it. It's one of my favorite Star Trek shows. So there is still good Star Trek happening right now. But I got to get through with the rest of Discovery, which is like 5 seasons.
Do you really, though? Wikipedia exists. They have plot summaries of everything.
That's not the same. What if there's a reference to one of these episodes in a future episode? I need to have seen it. No, I know it's stupid, and it's really dumb, too, because I watch... Because of, like, I just don't watch a lot of TV. Mostly because my time for media I'm spent playing video games, not because I'm doing something else more worthwhile. I'm just engaging in a different media. So I don't really watch a lot of TV. And when I do, it's been really bad Star Trek. So I'm probably just further I'm making my descent into madness more rapid by this, but I'm having a good time with it. So that's what is making me happy, I suppose, is laughing at Star Trek Discovery.
I have a quick what's making me happy, and it's what's been making me happy over the last several weeks, because it is definitely not the project of a single week. I mentioned weeks and weeks ago now that I'd like gotten a new e-reader, and I was doing a lot more reading, specifically like... You know, I've said on the show before, like I do a lot. I had been doing like a ton of audiobooks. I read quote unquote 20 to 30 audiobooks a year, and it's quite a habit. But recently I've been doing a lot more reading, and there was this one book that's been like on my to read pile for a long time that I was interested in reading, but it was very long and there was no audiobook available, so I'd been putting it off for a long time. I finally got around to it, and I'm super glad that I did, and I want to recommend the whole series now because I've now read 2 and almost a third book from this series, the 9 Worlds books by Victoria Goddard. And this sort of book that you probably would start with and that I started with is Hands of the Emperor. And probably not for everybody, but you'll probably know pretty quickly if it's for you. Hands of the Emperor is... First of all, I picked it up because I read this book. I think I probably talked about it on the show because I've read it like 3 times and I loved it, called The Goblin Emperor.
You talked about that.
Yes, The Goblin Emperor is a great book. It's sort of a fantasy novel about a unexpected heir, sort of essentially pressed into service as the head, almost divine ruler of an emperor in a sort of a fantasy world. This book has a lot of elements in common with that. I'm literally just going to read the summary of the back of the book summary here, which doesn't really encompass the entirety of the book because, again, this is a very long book. This is a 969-page book based on the Kindle edition, whatever pages mean in terms of Kindle. Cleophar Medang is the personal secretary to the last emperor of Astandalis, the lord of rising stars, the lord Magus of Zuni, the sun on earth, the god. He has spent more time with the emperor of Astandalis than any other person. He has never once touched his lord. He has never called him by name. He has never initiated a conversation. One day, Cleophar invites the sun on earth home to the proverbially remote Vangavayave for a holiday. The mere invitation could have seen Cleophar executed for blasphemy. The acceptance upends the world. This is a book entirely about friendship. What's really strange about this book is it has a little bit of the structure of a romance novel. It's all about characters. It's all about relationship. It's 100% a story about totally platonic friendship between 2 pretty old dudes. We're talking about dudes who time is actually kind of weird in this book, but functionally at least in their 50s. Essentially emperor and his secretary / functionary who have this incredibly deep, meaningful friendship that changes the world. And it's a wonderful book. It's like a beautifully kind of loving book. It's one of these things that I think if you've ever read any books by Becky Chambers, I don't really like all of her books, but I really liked the Monk and Robot books of hers, which are sort of, plot is really not forward. Certainly things happen, but they are, it's a pretty plot light, but very character forward. But more so than this is a book that made me weep openly. It was incredibly moving, and the characters are incredible. The relationships are fantastic, and it's really, really well written. I loved it. And one of the wonderful things that can happen to you in this life is you find something that you really, really love, and then you find out afterwards that there is a lot more of it. This is one book out of Victoria Goddard has spent the last several years writing more than 20 things, books, novellas, short stories, all set in this same shared universe and really deeply interwoven with each other. So you definitely want to start with The Hands of the Emperor. And if you like it, there's a lot more where that came from. But there is one direct sequel, but there is sort of a side story set, which is what I'm reading right now, rather than moving on directly to the direct sequel. There are 2 other series of books that take place either before or after that involve characters that tangentially play into all of this. I've never really been that into the idea of hey, here's a story. Let me write the same book again from a different character's perspective. So this doesn't exactly do that, but it does have this side character has a lot more to them. You want to learn more about, the person that walks in for 15 minutes at the end of one of these books. Well, there's a whole book about her. In fact, there's a whole book about her whole family. it's a lot of really deeply interrelated books, and the vibes are excellent. They are really good. So I just want to super highly recommend these. If you're not sure, if you want like more of someone telling you about this, it's a series with like a flow chart for figuring out where you should start or like what potential reading orders are, because the books are not necessarily chronologically linked. They are sort of like, so if you want the flow chart, there's an article called "You Should Really Be Reading Victoria Goddard's 9 Worlds series" by Alexandria Rowland on Reactor, which is the recently renamed like Tor.com like web magazine thing, where she kind of spends like 4,000 words gushing about these books and talks about like 4 different places you could potentially start in the series if you want. Really, the right answer is The Hands of the Emperor. It is a 1,000-page book. You really are going to want to read it anyway. It's great. I haven't even talked about some of the like most important themes of it. It's like, it's a story of an outsider from a different culture coming into a really established culture and facing a lot of racism and overcoming it. It's a very hopeful book. It's a book about governmental change. They implement a universal basic income in this fantasy series. Like it's like a political book, but the politics almost all happens off screen. It's mostly about the stories and feelings of the people involved. It's such a weird book. I've never read anything like it, and I cannot recommend it highly enough.
Well, Raygan, I just finished reading Dune Messiah, the second book in the Dune series. And so in 10 years, when I finish all the Dune books, maybe I'll...
No, you can stop there, Nate. I've read so many of the Dune books. You can stop there.
No, I must...
Don't do this to yourself.
I must follow my God Emperor and also watch bad Star Trek. I've chosen my...
And play Clickolding. You're doing all of this to yourself.
Oh, God. What have I done?
I'm ruining my genes. My gene line is being ruined by all of this bad media.
Okay. Thank you. So thank you all for letting me gush about the 9 Worlds books by Victoria Goddard. I wasn't sure where I was going to get a chance to do that. I'm a little sad Laura's not on this episode, because I think they're most especially up her alley, I think. So
I'm also glad for Laura to not have played Clickolding, though.
I'm kind of glad she wasn't here to talk about this with us. Laura, we love you. So, listeners, thank you for joining us on this fantastic episode of The Short Game.
She probably played it and then made up the dinner engagement. I'll be honest. She wasn't able to join us because she said...
Oh, I didn't tell you. I had to go to dinner with a friend. It got rescheduled to tonight. I'm sorry. I can't be there.
Mm-hmm. We're watching you, Laura.
No, she played this game, and then she made the conscious decision to not discuss it with 3 men on a podcast.
Fair.
Yeah. Smart, really.
Mm-hmm. She's
smart. Smart.
You think we'll ever have another episode where we even say cuck chair, let alone the amount of times we said it on this episode?
Just going to have to work it into the outro. Thank you for joining us on this episode of The Short Game. I'm Raygan Kelly, and you could find our show on the internet at shortgame.fm. That's the place where we've got all the various links and buttons, including the place where you can find our Patreon, patreon.com/theshortgame. Thank you, patrons. Every time we get a new patron, it's a little moment of celebration.
That's really the show's cuck chair.
Oh, God. I'm going to have to make a cuck chair on the Discord for folks to sit in. You can get access to the Discord cuck chair by joining us for just $3 a month. Will get you access to our Patreon. You'll get access to our Discord community, which is where we talk about games, plan future episodes, and just have a general good time on the internet. It's a good hang if you need a place for that. You can also find links there to all of the podcast platforms. Many of them now allow comments and reviews and so on. I recently heard that Spotify has added comments to individual episodes of podcasts now. Is this something that I have to worry about? I don't know. Nobody go on there and leave cuck chair comments, please.
Well,
and let's see.
Come on, Raygan. You know that was if you didn't want that, that's the worst thing to say.
I literally don't know if like someone going on our podcast on Spotify and like commenting weird shit will like push us up or down in the rankings. I don't know, and I maybe don't want to find out. So do whatever you want. Listen, you can find our social medias are all linked on there as well. I've been Raygan Kelly.
I'm Nate Heininger.
I'm Shane Kelly.
And thanks once again for joining us on this episode of The Short Game.